Is VAR working? Today, Casey and I, we talk about the strengths, weaknesses, and criticisms of the video assistant referee. Alright guys, we're back with another video. I'm Mark Anthony, this is Casey J. Today we discuss the topic, is VAR working? It's a very timely video as today in the World Cup we saw some VAR controversy. We had Portugal, Iran, and Spain and Morocco. Both games had their share of VAR controversy. So today we'll discuss the strengths, weaknesses, criticisms of VAR, and of course, at the end of the video, we'd love to get your comments and your thoughts on what you think of VAR. Is it working? The process? Please comment down below. Alright, so, Casey, let's go back. Before VAR was a thing, were you for it, or were you, not sure about it?
You know, I'm all about the game being called fair. There's nothing worse than your team losing a game off of a ref that just makes terrible call after terrible call. That being said, I don't want to see it take away from the essence of the game either. And now that we're seeing it more in action, I don't think it is. So I'm for VAR. It's getting the right decisions at least most of the time.
Yeah, I'm definitely a proponent of getting the calls right. I understand the criticisms. I totally understand taking away the flow of the game.
Totally.
Maybe, the excitement, the drama, and then you gotta stop. It's like a commercial, like nobody wants to sit through it. But at the end of the day, like you said, when it comes to sports in general, I want the calls right, especially the big ones. There are going to be calls that we disagree on. There's going to be fouls, there's going to be handballs, there's going to be insert foul situation here, right? But there are some calls that I think that are just crucial. Maybe a dive in the penalty box that's awarded a PK. We all know a goal in soccer is so important. So, with that being said, do you prefer VAR to be maybe, regulated to one part of the field, or I don't know, do you like it how it is in terms of anything can kind of be reviewed right now, or do you think it should just be calls that are goals or penalties or red cards? What's your kind of feeling?
No, I definitely think it should only be the big calls. A penalty call, a goal that might have been ruled off sides, things of that nature. I think those things need to be looked at because that's where the linesmen are fallible. They don't always keep up with play. So that's an easy mistake that they don't know if that guy was exactly on sides or not. And, they do fairly well, but, they give the credit to the attacker. So a lot of times these goals are given when they don't deserve it. And I do want to see the teams win on their actual merit and not by getting ahead of the rules. So for those little things, I think that as long as it's only on the bigger calls, you don't want to see it for every little challenge here or there. But the bigger calls, it helps.
Yeah, in terms of when it's being used, I think it's actually been really good. We're not seeing touch fouls in the middle of the field, yellow card offenses or things like that. We really are seeing fouls in the box, possible dives, possible red card offenses that the referee couldn't catch in the flow of the action. So in terms of how it's being used, timeliness, I think is good. The one thing that I will say that VAR cannot do is it cannot replace a human. So, for example, a call like an offsides call can be extremely hard to call for an assistant referee during the play, but it's a crucial call that they might have to go back on. But usually from video, you can tell factually if someone was in an offside position or not. Calls like a handball in the box, for example.
Pretty clean cut kind of thing.
Calls like handballs or handball in general, that rule is not 100% clear to everybody. We still will
left up to interpretation.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous for a reason, right? Like the letter of the law states a deliberate handball should only be called, but we know that negligence is a part of a deliberate handball. We know what there are terms like unnatural playing position and things like that. So with that being said, there are going to be calls that even with video assistant refereeing, there are going to be opinions, and that's where the referee will go. Was it a handball? Is it a yellow card? Is it a red card? Yeah. So for, I guess, my overall thing is, yes, it's good, but it can't get every situation right. You're not always going to agree with the call. So, with that being said, should there be limits to how many times VAR can be used in a game? We talked about we don't want it to see it too often, but should there be something like how the NFL, for example, in American football, how they implement a coaching challenge where every team gets 2 opportunities to use it, and if you use them and there might be a challenge later on that you want to use on, too bad you don't have another challenge to use. What is your thought on that? Would you like to see maybe a different approach where there's limits and maybe the teams get to decide when to challenge?
I hadn't really put much thought of it. That's an interesting proposal. I like it because it would still allow for the essence of the games. If you use those calls up early, it still allows the players to maybe try to fool the ref a little bit later on. So that'd be another tactical part of the game. It would be a hard fart change for most of the footballing world. I don't think that they're too expecting of it. But it's been good for VAR now, so maybe that does help. Maybe that does limit some of the challenges. You use them more wisely throughout a game. It also may, stop people from doing dives and from trying to trick the ref because they never know when they'll be called out for it. So it could work.
And, the whole process, watching it on TV is kind of bizarre, in my opinion. Like, you see 5 referees wearing the referee kit, sitting in a booth, and then there's one manager referee that's behind them. I don't know if they're answering phone calls or sending out envelopes. It's just bizarre to me how you have the 4 officials on the field. You got the 2 assistants running the lines. You have the center ref, and then you have the 4th official kind of keeping everything, calm and collected on the sidelines. And then you have another gang of people. We don't even know where they are, and we don't know what goes into how they decide when to challenge. And I think that maybe if you do give teams the ability, whether it's the coach or the captain of the team on the field, you give them the ability to be like, no, we would like you to look at that. Maybe it'll take away some of the criticisms that we hear about how VAR still being biased towards bigger teams or something like that. You think maybe your player who went down in the box, he was tackled in the box, but you don't even know why they're not choosing to review it, let alone changing the call, right?
Yeah, well, and the people that say it's going to be biased for their team and all that, those are the people that enjoy seeing their player get away with a dive. I won't mention any names from Barcelona or some other players
those guys
that like to dive quite a bit. But those teams thrive on that. They win a lot of games because their players are big name players that get away with diving because the refs so quote unquote protect them. So even the smallest touch against them is a foul. So I think those are the guys that are really against this because they don't want to see their team lose that advantage.
Yeah, fortunately, I think that in terms of diving, VAR is great because I think that has eliminated a lot. We saw with Neymar the other day. I mean, you saw that?
Yeah.
That blatant dive. I mean, the breeze changed and Neymar was on the ground.
Yeah.
That was a bizarre dive.
He's definitely up there as a
and honestly, I don't know how the ref got fooled. I mean, it looked in real time as blatant of a guy throwing himself to the ground as we could ever see. But regardless, they got the call right. So he, dove. The penalty was not awarded. The game continued. So in terms of diving and in those calls, I think VAR has been great for it. Now, in terms of the excitement of the game, now it's 1-1, 90th minute. Is it a foul? Is it not? Is it a penalty? Is it not? Does it take away from the emotion of the game when there is a long stoppage, maybe 2 minutes or so for the referee to, run over, take a look at the screen, come back on and make the call? Does it take away from the excitement?
It does. Even as a supporter of it, and liking getting the right calls, it's just it's one of the reasons I've tried to watch American football throughout my history, and I have a hard time watching a full game. It's a sport that's only supposed to take an hour and a half, 2 hours to play, and we've made it a 4 or 5 hour event because we're stopping every 5 seconds. And I really don't want to see soccer or football become that. You lose the passion. You lose that flow. And if your team's the one with the ball and that momentum, You don't want a 2-minute break where the other team gets to catch their breath, regroup, talk to each other, re-strategize. It's everything you don't want to see. Now, on the other side of it, if you're the team that might be getting a little pounding, well, that's a 2-minute respite to get my energy back, to regroup. So, could go either way there, but it does hurt the flow of the game.
I mean, soccer is a game that's supposed to be played for 45 to 50 minutes straight, and then you take a break, and then you do it again, right? Yeah. But so any stoppage in this game is noticeable, rather than like, I know baseball has review now, football. Those are sports that are like stop, start, where soccer, yes, the ball goes out of play. There might be a slight break in the action. There might be a few seconds for you to run to the bathroom. But overall, it's a continuous clock. So, yeah, it does take away some of the flow, some of the excitement, but at the end of the day, it just kind of depends if it's worth, giving up a little bit of that to get ultimately the biggest calls right. So with that being said, MLS has VAR. Most of the top leagues either have it or are adopting it. Now, right? Yeah, if the leagues haven't adopted it yet, it'll come, because it's now FIFA. I don't see them going backwards from this. It's one of those things where they've implemented this. They can fine tune it and make it better, but I don't see them doing, a 180 and just walking away from VAR. So with that said, USL doesn't have it. Would you like to go to Sac Republic games and see them use VAR?
I mean, ultimately, I would like to see it on all levels of play, because like we talked about, it lets team win games off merit. We've even seen some bad calls in the USL that we're like, come on, this has ruined the whole game because the decisions weren't right. But at this level, too, the refs are still learning. They're not top-notch refs yet. So I think you might oversee usage in VAR just because of that learning curve for the refs and the level of play we're at. So I think it should be in every league, but again, with limits like we kind of talked about before, it needs to definitely be used properly. But I also don't think we'll see it in USL anytime soon.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the USL is kind of where referees are also learning. They're on their way to being MLS referees, or maybe they actually are MLS referees, but not regular. What about the argument that it should be implemented in USL to give them that experience of using it, when they get to the higher levels?
Absolutely, and that kind of goes along with why I think they should have it, because I think all leagues should. It should be, except for leagues obviously that are way down in like the amateur divisions and things like that. Let's not say all leagues. But any professional league should have it, because then they strive, and it gets the players used to playing with that too. If you're pulling somebody up from USL and they get to MLS, they're used to having those VAR decisions, and they get used to the flow of the game with the VAR. So I think it would be helpful to have it in the USL level for the coaches, for the manager, for the referees, and for the players.
Yeah, I think it would be cool if we saw like the TBB with like a VAR chant or something, like if Nisha was like taken down in the box and like the referee just yelled play on or something. Like if we could get everybody in the crowd to be doing the VAR little TV thing, that would be fantastic. So overall, I mean, sounds like you're in agreement. You like VAR. You just, like with everything, you just want it to be a little bit better. Is that what I get from you?
I think in the future it's only going to get better. They're going to get more efficient with it. We're going to get used to seeing it more, and I think that'll also stop us. Like you said today, there was a couple of usage in the World Cup where you're kind of like, okay, maybe we're overusing it now. Maybe we shouldn't. But maybe those are learning experiences too. Maybe they look back and say, okay, that wasn't the most appropriate time for us to use it. So going forward, we can edit that and we don't use it in that situation again. It's still a young system.
Yeah, I think what the World Cup is showing is that it's ultimately a good thing, but there still needs to be more transparency. Like what we talked about, the guys in the booth, like the handball decision against Portugal today, very odd reversal, because the referee in real time thought that it was fair, that it was fine, and then they do check it, which is great. Like, I'm all for them getting it right. Yeah. But then he comes back and then points to the spot, and Iran's awarded a penalty. It didn't affect the standings in the group. It almost did. Fortunately, it didn't, because I think if it did, it'd be even hugely controversial at this point, rather than it being like a minimal thing. But Yeah, like in that process, was it one guy making the call? Was it all the referees in the booth?
Yeah.
You know, sitting down, watching the monitor, you know, slowing down the film, looking at the replay. Were they giving their opinion? Did they vote on it? Like, is this a jury? We need to know a little bit more on how the process works on some of these big calls, if not for anything else other than to give the fans the, I guess, idea or trust that they are reviewing it, they are looking at it, and they are giving us their opinion, you know, as best defined by the rules. So other than that, we would love to know your take on VAR. I want to know if what you think of the process, if you think it's good or bad for the beautiful game. Let us know if you want to see it implemented in the USL for all you Sac Republic fans. Let us know what you think of the calls today in the World Cup, based on what you've seen the last, I guess, not just today, but based on what we've seen so far in the World Cup. Let us know your thoughts on VAR. Subscribe below for all of our content. Hope to see you guys soon.